chief of the clan. He was called Lachlan Catanac, and I am going to take you back to the 15th century when he was chief. So Lachlan was married to Elizabeth Campbell, who was the sister of the Duke of Argyll, who was based at Inverary Castle in Inverary, just down the coast there. Now, it was not a love match. Elizabeth and Lachlan had a very unhappy marriage. And to top it all off, she had failed to produce an heir for him. So, of course, in the 15th century, that was what women were for. They were to have babies, and if you couldn't do that, then you were pretty useless, so Lachlan thought. So he came up with a cunning plan. He decided to have his men tie Elizabeth up and take her out to this rock, which is visible only at low tide. And he knew that when the tide came back up, she would be swept away and drowned. No evidence. He was, home free, he could remarry, have his babies. So that was his cunning plan. And he had his men do that. He went away and he wrote a letter to the Earl of Argyll and said how terribly sorry he was to impart that his beloved Elizabeth had passed away in a tragic accident. Woe is me. But being a nice chap, I'm going to bring her body back because I know it's important for her to be buried with the other Campbells amongst her kin. So he followed that letter up with a visit to Inverary. He had a coffin in tow, which was probably full of stones or a dead sheep or something. And he arrived at Inverary Castle and he was welcomed by the Earl, who invited him to come in and dine with him. And into the banqueting hall he goes to find Elizabeth sat there at the head of the table, very much alive and well. So she had been on this rock. She had been stranded and she had screamed really quite loudly, as you would. And some fishermen who were just up Loch Linney, they had heard her, they'd come and they'd rescued her, taken her back to Inverary once they'd heard her sorry tale. So Lachlan, little bit of an awkward moment at this point. He was well and truly caught out. So the miracle of the story is that they let him go at that time, because if you invite someone into your home and you offer them food, it's apparently bad form to chop their head off. Who'd have thought it? So they let him go. The marriage was annulled. We know that Elizabeth went on to remarry. She was very happy. And Lachlan went on to marry twice more. He got his longed for heir, but it wasn't the end of his sorry tale, because actually it was the end of his sorry tale, because they caught up with him in Edinburgh many years later while he was asleep in his bed, and they introduced him to the sharp and pointy end of a sword, and he met a bit of a sticky end, really. So I like to tell women this story as a warning, really, that if you're having a little bit of a rocky patch with your husband and he offers to take you on a nice little boat ride, then it's probably prudent to say no, especially if you're around this area, because there's a handy rock out there, I'm told. So, yeah.